Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, are you ready to vote? All 4 Mississippi seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are up for grabs in the June 7th primaries. We'll get a preview and some key information on voting changes with Kimberly Campbell from AARP Mississippi. Also, cannabis cultivators are ready and eager to do business in the Magnolia State, but many local leaders have already closed their doors to the state's medical marijuana program. Well, voters in those cities and counties have the final say. Melvin Robinson of the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association talks about opt-outs, petition drives, and the effort to educate citizens about medical marijuana. It's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. It's an election year in Mississippi. Voters will take part in congressional primary elections 3 Tuesdays from now on June 7th. All 3 U.S. House Republicans from Mississippi face some level of primary challenge, as does Mississippi's sole Democrat in the House, Benny Thompson. 12 News is keeping an eye out for important changes in this year's voting, including new deadlines, poll locations, and more. We're glad to have Kimberly Campbell with us by Zoom to talk about these changes. She is the state director of AARP Mississippi. It's the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization focused on the issues impacting Americans 50 and older. Kimberly Campbell is the former state representative for District 72 in Hinds and Madison counties. Kimberly Campbell, welcome to Mississippi Insight.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, you keep an eye out on politics as a former Democrat in the state house. Which of these primary races are you watching closely this year, and what issues do you think will drive those races?
Well, we watch all of them, whether it's from just the Mississippi delegation or all of the congressional leaders. We operate as a whole national body. We're always concerned that the voters, that they're heard, that the issues from our members and volunteers are heard, and that those candidates, have answers for them. Of course, some of our biggest issues across the country is still dealing with the rising cost of prescription drugs. That is our largest campaign at the moment. We're still hearing from members to where they're having to see if they can buy groceries, and now they can get gas, as well as being able to get their prescriptions. And so we still want Congress to act on that. We also are still always in the fight for Medicare, as well as making Social Security a solvent. That's a really, really big one. Our demographic is typically already receiving their Social Security or will soon. So it's interesting because typically what we will hear from them is, I'm okay. I know I'll get my benefits, or I know I'm getting my benefits, but I'm concerned for future generations. I'm concerned about my children, my grandchildren. Will Social Security still be around for them? So these are just a few of the issues that we still lobby for and fight against. Caregivers, for instance, we still want a federal legislation as well as state level to deal with our caregivers, to give them either a tax credit or benefits. So there's a lot that we still lobby, and we're looking for those candidates to give us their viewpoints on our major issues.
When it comes to inflation, what are you hearing from seniors and the impact it's having, since they're on a fixed income, about the inflation and the impact it's having on them?
Again, that is so strongly tied to our prescription work. We just had a big people's hearing. It was a virtual hearing across the country on that. And that is huge. I mean, we were already hearing from them the pain points about their prescriptions and the decisions they're having to make. But now with inflation and so many other things, they're like, I'm getting to the point to where not only can I just get half of it, but I can't get any of it. And now, of course, not always legislation, but some of the state level work that we do also deals with food insecurities. And so many times that is also a way that we stand in the gap for our seniors here in the state of Mississippi, whether it's through resources, programs, or straight, pumping in dollars to entities that can help, send out those meals and so forth to those most needed seniors in our state.
Let's cover some important deadlines. What do voters mark on their calendars this time around?
Well, this time around, the last deadline, because we passed registration deadlines and all of that. So at this point, we want you to vote. We want you to know that June 7th is voting. That's when you need to show up. But we also want you to be aware of the different ways that we can vote. Last year and year before, whenever we had to vote for anything, we had, COVID differences that could say that we could either vote absentee or could do early voting. That is no longer there anymore. So we do want to make sure that people understand that is a change. So COVID is not a way that you can vote early anymore or by absentee. But there's still, classifications. Typically absentee, mail-in absentee is definitely for those 65 and older, those that have some type of temporary or permanent disability. But now early in-person is just about anybody, but you still have to attest to things. You got to go to your circuit clerk's office, and whether it's I'll be out of the country on June 7th, or I'm working out of the state on June 7th, something that checks one of those boxes, and you'll be able to then vote right then at your circuit clerk's office. So we want you to, if you know you're not going to be in your county to vote on June 7th, check now. Call your circuit clerk's office and see if you qualify to do either absentee mail-in or early in-person. And if not, show it with your identification and vote in person on June 7th.
Yeah, there's also a party primaries that we're looking at. Will party affiliation have an impact on when Mississippians can vote or on all this?
Mississippi is one of those states to where we do not register by party as much as the state. I hear that often. People tend to think that we do, but we do not. Here's the thing, though. During the primary, you can either vote in the Republican primary or the Democrat primary. However, if that primary goes to a runoff, you can't cross over. So if I vote in the Republican primary and there's a runoff, though, in the Democrat primary, I can't then show up on runoff day for the Democrat candidate. You cannot do that. So wherever you vote for the primary, that's where you have to stay for the runoff. But when it comes to the general, then anybody can vote for whomever they see on their screen during the general.
Well, here's a key question without some controversy. What sort of identification will people need to vote?
Really just about anything, any government issued or state issued, whether that's your driver's license, whether that's, you can always get state identification cards. In fact, if you contact either your circuit clerk's office or the Mississippi Secretary of State's office, they have information on how you can get an issued identification card that's outside of a driver's license. You can use your passport. You can use almost anything. So we want you to, do your due diligence and check those things out. It can be a U.S. military ID card. It can be firearms license. It can be a student photo ID. Speaking of students, because I'm talking about college students in particular, you know that you're still registered for your home county and you will be away. That is one of the boxes that you can check to do early in-person voting. And that's the other thing. Check to make sure your precinct has not moved, because sometimes precincts change and there's mix up that it's changed. And if you have moved, make sure you have been registered for the new location.
Are IDs a big question among voters that you're hearing from?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Are IDs a big question among voters that you're hearing from?
We've not heard issues with IDs from our members and volunteers. We always want to remind them, though, to make sure that you have it so that they don't have any issues at the polls.
You noted some district changes. In Hinds County, voters in District 2 and 3 have new polling places that they need to check in on. Remind viewers where they can go to get more information on how to vote in our state this year.
Absolutely. Start with your circuit clerk's office. That's exactly where you need to start. There is also information on the Mississippi Secretary of State's website, because they oversee the voting, the elections for the state of Mississippi. But really, go to your county circuit clerk's office. For instance, if you've always lived in Hinds, even if you've moved from one location to the next, but you're still in Hinds County, go to the Hinds County Circuit Clerk's office. Make sure you understand where your address and where that voting precinct is located. If you lived in Hinds, but now you live in Madison, you need to go to Madison's Circuit Clerk's office. And you need to make sure that they have your information and that you're registered to vote with your new address at the new precinct in the new county.
So once again, the big issues facing seniors this election cycle, it's basically prescription drugs. That's the main concern that they have on the
prescription drugs is the main thing. Social Security on the federal side is always a big thing about it remaining solvent. Healthcare is always huge. We always want to make sure that our demographic has access to quality healthcare. So these are always issues that are important to us. But prescription drugs is huge. That is a big one.
Kimberly Campbell, thank you very much. You have some links online with your voter resources also, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Kimberly Campbell, AARP with Mississippi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
After the break, want to learn more about medical marijuana program? There's a podcast for that. We'll talk with its host when Mississippi Insight continues. The state health department says it's just about ready for applications for the new medical marijuana program. It could be months yet before medical cannabis is available to Mississippians who want to use it. But many cities and counties in our state have already opted out of the program. We wanted to get an update on the situation and the petition drives that may overturn some of these opt-outs. Melvin Robinson is a representative of the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association. We spoke with him last week. Melvin, the state has been keeping track of it, but there are many, about 20 cities already and 12 counties that have decided to opt out of medical marijuana program to some limit or another. That's according to analysis from MississippiToday.org. Your group is supporting local efforts to overturn those opt-outs. Remind our viewers what you all are doing to do that.
Yes, so we have actually sponsored a petition, signature drives at local municipalities that have opted out of the MMCA. We currently have one in Brandon and we currently have one in Ridgeland. We also support other petition drives throughout the state. Usually people will ask us or call or email and ask us, hey, how can we help? How can we get this done? We provide them with their information. We provide them with a petition form, and we make sure that they have the best practices on going forward with those signature drives.
Are you fairly confident that a lot of these cities that have opted out, that eventually they'll opt back in after they see things up and running?
I am very confident in that. I think once the program actually starts, people will get used to it actually being a thing, because again, at the end of the day, this is just an alternative form of healthcare. And I think once people understand, the sky isn't falling or anything like that, more people will be comfortable with opting into the program.
You kind of compare this to the lottery. You make your comparison to why you think this is somewhat like how we started with the lottery.
Oh, yeah, for sure. When the lottery, it was a huge debate for decades about actually having a lottery here. People didn't want it. Members of the public, people in the legislature, things like that. And now once we have it, we're enjoying that economic windfall from those proceeds from the lottery. We aren't shipping out money to Louisiana for their lottery. We have it in-house, and we can actually improve our infrastructure here and different things with that money and the world in the end. So I think the same thing will happen with medical cannabis.
Were you surprised of the cities and the counties that did opt out?
Not at all, not at all. I kind of suspected that we would have a few opt-outs, and we were prepared to handle that with petition drives and supporting people that wanted to have petition drives, but I was not surprised, no.
Are you getting the kind of response that you were hoping for through these petition drives?
Brandon and Ridgeland, the ones that we have our sponsored petition drives, are doing very well. We are working with different businesses there, making sure that we work with different members in the public there to make sure we can get people the information that they need, they can sign, and they can know that they played their part in making sure that their area had access to medical cannabis.
What about like Madison and Glusset, were really kind of started up in Madison? Are you trying to get and penetrate those areas as well?
We have plans for Madison.
And you'll think you'll make headway there?
Yes.
Talk a little bit. Let's look at the industry as a moment. Clint Patterson of Mockingbird Cannabis is now telling reporters that he expects the state will collect about $150 to $200 million in tax revenue, another $50 to $100 million in business fees over the first full year of medical marijuana program. We haven't verified those figures, but do you agree with the medical marijuana industry will have that kind of scale of impact in sending coffers to the state?
I could definitely see it. And Clint and Mockingbird, they are members of the MSCTA as well. We love Clint, we love Mockingbird. They are doing incredible things out there in Raymond. And we're excited to see the industry growing at this kind of pace. I could definitely see those numbers. We had previous projections with Initiative 65 before, but because this program is not Initiative 65, it's a little bit different as far as patient access and everything would go. We definitely believe we could see that kind of economic windfall here.
When we talk about the kind of money that this could be bringing into the state, I mean, this is talking about the first year. What are we looking at maybe 5-10 years from now that where medical marijuana could be for the state of Mississippi?
Well, I think once the industry grows more, because you have to remember, This program is brand new. So right now, what we're doing for the first couple of years, we're making sure we're getting the infrastructure strong, all these kind of things. So once we actually have the program in place and it's maturing and maturing and growing, the sky's the limit from there. A lot of different places, they have these record revenues and record tax revenues and things like that going on right now, from the pandemic or from just job growth and things like that. One interesting thing about the legal cannabis industry is there are more workers in the legal cannabis industry than there are dentists and firemen in America. So it's one of the fastest growing business sectors in America, and I'm really excited that Mississippi can be a part of that.
The health department is set to begin the process of reviewing and approving applications for patients, medical practitioners, cultivators, and others. Is your group satisfied with the pace of this process right now?
Yes, the Department of Health has been incredible. They have been making sure that they have hit all their deadlines, bringing out rules and regulations, bringing out a lot of information that people would need. And we're really appreciative that they have decided to go full steam ahead and make sure that they can get this information out. Because again, at the end of the day, this is a program that is alternative healthcare, and healthcare is something that we definitely need in the state. And yeah, the Department of Health has been great in that. What
bumps in the road are you anticipating and that people should maybe keep an eye out for?
Jess, you have to understand it's going to be growing pains. When you can actually submit for a license, everything is going to be online. It's going to be a flood of applications coming in, so you just have to be patient. It's going to be growing pains. You have to understand no one here has done this yet, so it's a new industry, and yeah, it's just those kind of growing pains.
We'll talk about those burning questions many Mississippians have with Melvin Robinson after the break. It's Mississippi Insight only on WJTV. We see that you and your colleagues at MCTA have gotten into a video business, and tell us about Burning Questions. What is this and what is it all about?
Oh yeah, so Burning Questions is our weekly podcast. It is hosted by me, and what we do is the podcast focuses on the Mississippi cannabis industry. So for our first episode, we did a virtual patient workshop with Angie Calhoun and Dr. Nathan McIntosh of the Mississippi Cannabis Patients Alliance, and that was basically detailing the way that patients can get their medical card. So it's one of those things where if they can't go to Jackson or they can't go to a certain part of the state or anything, they can just watch and get this information. And that's one of the things that we really love doing at the MSCTA is providing educational information, because we want our citizens of the state to be as educated as possible about medical cannabis.
And how do I find your podcast if I want to hear and get this information?
So it's on all digital DSPs, anyone you like Spotify, Google, Apple. You can also watch us weekly on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on our Facebook page or our YouTube. All you have to do is type in MSCTA and it'll take you there.
7 p.m. That's when you're live on the podcast
yes,
at that time?
Yes.
Okay, and then of course anytime you want to reach out.
Yes.
And how many? And you do it once a week, or is it daily, or what?
So we do it once a week, every Tuesday, and then we release the episode audio only on Wednesdays.
Okay, and you're expecting some other big guests on your show? What's your next one?
Indeed. We have a couple in the can. I don't want to announce yet, but I'm very excited. I think a lot of people will recognize a lot of the people that we're going to have on. And again, as long as we can provide the information and, entertain people, talk about what's going on in the state, I love it. And we're really happy that we could provide such a platform for the Mississippi cannabis industry.
What's the most common question you get from your audience when it comes to cannabis or anything dealing with medical marijuana?
When can I buy it? Yeah, when can I buy it? And what I always tell people is once these facilities have their licenses, you have a grow cycle. And once that grow cycle is completed, then that is when you will have available product.
For someone who doesn't know anything about maybe cannabis or has very little knowledge of it, is this something they could do invest in as a business or get involved as a business if they wanted to dip their hands into this?
Sure. Most people, when they think about a cannabis business, they think about cultivation. That is where you actually grow it. They think about production, where you actually produce the actual cannabis, where you dry it and everything like that, or they think about dispensaries where you actually sell it. But we have a lot of ancillary businesses that you can attend where you don't have to touch any plants. And also you do have other plant touching businesses such as transportation, security, disposal, those kind of things. So there's options for everyone. It's just not growing. And that's what we kind of make sure that we try to make people understand, this is an entire industry and we have enough room to build an infrastructure that everyone can actually participate in.
All right, Melvin Robinson, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll be right back. Big thanks to Kimberly Campbell and Melvin Robinson for joining us. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.